Today, we're diving into the origin of one of the world's truly great epic poems, a cornerstone of Hindu literature, the Ramayana. Now, it's this incredible tale of heroes, demons, duty, and devotion that has absolutely captivated people for thousands of years. But we're not just looking at the story in the epic, we're going to explore the story of the epic itself. How did this timeless tale even come to be? So you have to wonder, right? How does something so huge, so foundational actually get started? Is it, a flash of divine inspiration, a commission from a king, or does it begin somewhere much smaller, much more personal? That's the question we're digging into today, and we're using the Ramayana's own story of its creation to do it. And our story begins with this man, Valmiki. The Ramayana literally opens with this praise for him. And I love this. It doesn't just call him a writer, it calls him a bird of charming song. He's considered the very first poet, the Adikavi. And this verse, it just perfectly sets the stage for a story that's as much about the birth of poetry as it is about the life of its hero. And here's the thing about the birth of that poetry, the very first verse. It didn't come from a moment of joy or some grand revelation. No, it was born from a moment of profound and really sudden grief. So picture this. The scene is a quiet forest. The sage Valmiki is just taking a walk, and he sees a pair of curlew birds, just being happy, playing together. But that peace is just shattered when a hunter's arrow strikes the male bird down, killing it instantly. Valmiki stands there and watches the female bird crying out in agony for her dead mate. And the sight of this senseless cruelty, the sound of her mourning, it just fills his heart with this overwhelming wave of empathy and sorrow. The text calls this feeling Ruth. He is just completely overcome. And out of that raw, intense emotion, a curse just erupts from Valmiki's lips. But as the words came out, he realized something incredible. This wasn't just a shout of anger. It was perfectly structured. It had meter. It had rhythm. It was poetry. And in this flash of inspiration, Valmiki realized he hadn't just spoken, he had created. He even names this new form of verse himself, which is just a brilliant moment. He sees that his grief, his shoka, had spontaneously turned into a perfectly metered verse, a shloka. And this is the real core of the origin story. In that moment of shared suffering with a helpless creature, the art of poetry itself was born. The world's first poem wasn't a hymn of praise, but an elegy, born from pure compassion. So now that he's discovered this powerful new medium, Valmiki needs a subject that's worthy of it. He's got the form, but now he needs a hero, a perfect hero. And so the quest began. He asks this very question to the divine sage Narad. And he isn't just looking for a strong warrior or, a wise king. He's asking for someone who has every single possible virtue, a man who's heroic, who keeps his promises, who's kind to every living thing, who's just, wise, and totally free from envy or rage. I mean, who could possibly fit that description? Well, Narad's answer is immediate. He says, yes, there is such a man, Rama, the prince of Ayodhya. And he describes someone who is the perfect son, the perfect warrior, the perfect man. Beautiful, strong, compassionate, and absolutely unwavering in his duty. And with that, his subject was found. Valmiki could now begin his epic. But an epic needs more than a perfect hero. It needs a great trial to actually test that perfection. And the central conflict of the Ramayana, well, it comes from a moment that puts Rama's unwavering commitment to duty to the absolute ultimate test. See, years before, Rama's father, King Dasharatha, had granted two boons, basically two unbreakable promises to his favorite queen, Kaikeyi. And on the very eve of Rama's coronation, she decides, you know what, it's time to cash those in. All because of jealousy and some court intrigue. And her demands are just devastating. Not only does Rama lose the throne that's rightfully his, but he gets exiled. He's banished from the kingdom for 14 long years. The king is heartbroken, of course, but a king's promise is a king's promise. The whole kingdom is thrown into despair. So, how does the perfect hero react to all of this? This is Rama's response. There's no anger, no argument, no hesitation. He accepts his fate with perfect calm. For Rama, his dharma, his sacred duty, to honor his father's word is more important than his own life, his kingdom, or his happiness. It is the ultimate expression of the ideal he represents. But his wife, Sita, she refuses to accept this.
In this powerful display of devotion, she completely rejects the safety and luxury of the palace. She basically declares that any place without Rama, even a palace, is no home to her, and that the wild forest with him is her only true joy. She insists on joining him in exile, and so does his loyal brother Lakshman.
And so their journey begins, a story that has echoed through millennia. But what gives this story, a story born from a moment of grief for a bird, such incredible staying power? Well, according to the text itself, the answer was prophesied from the very beginning. According to the text, the gods themselves gave Valmiki this prophecy about the epic he was about to write. And this quote, which you see here in Latin from a much, much later scholarly translation, just speaks to the incredible journey this text has had across cultures and centuries. And here's the translation, a promise of immortality for the poem. It prophesied that as long as the natural world exists, so too will the story of Rama. And for over 2,000 years, you know what? That is held true. The story of Valmiki's grief, Rama's duty, and Sita's devotion is still being told, read, and celebrated. And this leaves us with a final thought. What is it that makes a story last forever? Is it the perfect hero? Is it the epic battles? Or is it something more fundamental? Perhaps it's the idea that the greatest art, like that very first poem, is born from compassion, that duty can be a higher calling than power, and that a story rooted in these fundamental human emotions, grief, love, loyalty, can in fact last as long as the mountains and the rivers themselves.